Welcome back. And moving on to our first segment of today, talking about the Egyptian economy, talking about the industry, and also about the spinning factory to be established in Al Mahalla, one of the largest factories in the region. We're going to discuss this in more details with our guest for today, Professor Dr. Youmn Hamaki, Professor of Economics at Shams University. Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning.
So, Doctor, first of all, of course, we talked a lot about weaving, about spinning in Egypt, and this can be a real competitive advantage if Egypt took this into consideration. So now we are talking about the establishment of the largest spinning factory in Al Mahalla, in the region. How do you see this?
I can see that it's a very important way to restore, the glory of Egyptian cotton. We know quite well that Egyptian cotton, we used 4 decades and 5 decades to talk about Egyptian cotton, and unfortunately we lost this glory for the last decades, and it's a very good opportunity to restore that glory, since Egypt is quite well known of long staple cotton. This long staple cotton may enable Egypt to be one of the largest countries producing very delicate and very, high type of ready-made clothes, taking into consideration nowadays climate change and increasing temperature. So it could be a very important, comparative advantage for Egypt to be used efficiently in order to, gain a large part of the international market of this industry. And I believe that having this very large factory and regaining the reputation of Al Mahalla, as we used to have the largest industries of spinning and weaving and ready-made garments in Al Mahalla Al Kubra. We lost that for the last period, and the public sector companies were leading this position in Al Mahalla Al Kubra. Nowadays, what has been declared by President in his meeting 2 days ago was, to how extent we are moving towards, completing the value chain for the production of ready-made clothes, and which needs how to complete the value chain, starting from dealing with cotton, and in this the largest factory in the Middle East actually, and quite well equipped with latest technology, and in cooperation with multinationals professional in this side, which means that the most important aim for that is to penetrate international markets using our reputation for our cotton. And this coincides actually with cultivation of cotton, long staple cotton, and experimental works nowadays taking part in short staple cotton, since it is completely, this type is completely used by our factories, but we need to specialize and not to export our long staple cotton as raw materials, but to be to add value added to it, and to manufacture such long staple cotton into by spinning and weaving and then ready-made garments. And this necessitated to have a company managing this value chain from one perspective, from another a company for trademarks, for selling, for marketing, and so on. So by having all this value chain, I believe that Egypt is going to regain, inshallah, its position internationally, and regaining the reputation of the glory of Egyptian cotton. This is quite important. Why? Because Nashwa, if you refer to our export of ready-made clothes, you are going to find that we are exporting only with $2 billion. This is quite minimal compared to other competitive countries like Vietnam, like Indonesia, and these are, these countries, they started their development lately, and they managed to achieve a very good performance regarding exportation of ready-made clothes. These $2 billion exportation can be increased into 30 billions in no time if we manage quite well our resources in this field. So taking into consideration informal workshops in Egypt working in ready-made clothes. And when you talk about the challenges that Egypt faced during the last period, starting from devaluation of the Egyptian pound in 2016, and then COVID-19, and then the Ukrainian war, you are going to find that all these informal sector companies, very small companies, have been hit seriously by these repercussions. And according to that, we lost a lot of potentialities for production in different fields, but specifically in ready-made clothes that had been affected seriously. So from my perspective, actually, the government should take specific steps towards how to address these workshops, these companies, how to support them so that to address these challenges. And if the government is going to do that properly, I believe that productive capacities are going to be added in no time, and we can use it quite well in our exportation.
Doctor, also President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi yesterday gave his directives to rely basically on local components, and I think this will have also another impact on the Egyptian economy.
This is quite important. Why? Because actually when we started our economic reform in 2016, the main aim of such reform is to start with a financial and monetary reform and then move towards structural reform. And actually Egypt has large experiences starting from 1990, when we have this economic reform after defaulting in 1990 and referring to IMF to have the support of IMF, and we start to our economic reform in this period. And actually Egypt in this period concentrated on financial and monetary reform. We succeeded quite well to achieve a better economic performance after this economic reform, but unfortunately we neglected the structural reform. And the same mistake has been repeated in this reform 2016, which means that we concentrated on financial. It is natural to start with financial and monetary reform, but within this period, starting from 2016, we had a large opportunities to move into structural reform. Egypt is full of opportunities. Our public sector's companies can present very good potentiality if we can use it efficiently enough. So referring to economic management, this is what I'm talking about. If you refer, because we are, as economists, we have a lot of studies referring to the potentialities of the Egyptian economy. And the mega project have added to such potentialities very good horizons. Why? Because when you have nowadays the opportunity to go through all governorates of Egypt, starting from Upper Egypt with transportation, and you have all sources of, nowadays you have the mixed energy. We have solar energy, we have, electricity nowadays is quite restored after what happened during the last period of the reform of, types of energy. So nowadays you are quite able to, take off towards structural reform, to upgrade your technology, to, attract foreign direct investment towards the major investment. Like nowadays you are having renewable energy, solar, but you need to, to refer to the high technological product in which you can attract foreign direct investment to come and to transfer technology. Potentialities are quite huge for Egypt in mineral resources, in, ready-made clothes. This is, what we can say as labor-intensive product, despite all the, technological advancements that happened during the last period, but still ready-made clothes, and that's what the president has concentrated on, that we need to concentrate on the industries to absorb opportunities of job. So this is quite important. Ready-made clothes can be a cornerstone for that. You can add to that, food industries. We are doing quite well in food industries, but still the component important still high, which means that this, exercise and efforts that have been done during the last period, these efforts weren't quite enough towards increasing the local content for our industry. So what we have to do for this period is to concentrate, as our president has mentioned, to concentrate in a very good action plan, how to concentrate on specifying what are the local contents that can be produced immediately, and we have a comparative advantage in it. And actually, Nashwa, we have all the studies in food industries, which product we can produce, in ready-made, which we have in furniture production, we have in leather production, even for electronic production, we have, the value chain. Just you have to refer to the value chain and specify which products you can refer to. And it is ironic to know that most producers in Egypt, industrial production, they don't know even about their neighbors, what they are producing. And this has been raised in different, occasions in our workshops and conference to specify what are the obstacles facing our industrial sector. Businessmen, they mentioned that, we need a platform to exchange data about the production, so that these producers can know to how extent they can rely on each other. So contemplating such a value chain can be a very important recommendation for this period, so that we can increase the local content. And then marketing all the industries that can that are required actually to complete the value chain. I believe this should be the priority of the role of government for the coming period, in cooperation with industrial federation and businessmen associations and so on. We have to work in a collaborative way, so that to restore these deficiencies in order to give just an injection for our industrial sector, because our industrial sector can be an engine, a very important engine for growth in Egypt.
So we're talking about the holistic business cycle as a whole.
Yes,
so
definitely.
So talking about weaving and spinning, and we talked a lot about also other feeding industries. So if we are talking about this factory, and definitely its impact will be having more factors in other fields, feeding industry, talking about, just as you mentioned, the ready-made clothes and many minute details, right?
Yes, of course, you are quite right. And this is what we need to work on, because as I mentioned, Egypt is suffering a lot from not having a database for each industry. And I kept saying now for more than 20 years, we need what is called a production index for each industry, this production index, the importance of such production index, it's specifying, first of all, what is the value chain for each industry and what is the cost of production. Because nowadays you need to know each part of the component of this value chain, what is the cost of production. And if you don't have these data, which are essential in order to enhance the role of government. The role of government everywhere in economic activities is to make the balance between public interest and private interest. And in order to do such a very important role of the government, you need institutions and you need database. Without these institutions that are well equipped of not only data but human resources and equipments and so on, so that to manage this data and to analyze such data to be used in decision making, I don't know that to how extent we can manage such what we are looking for as economic growth and economic development. But this is actually a serious point that we need to work on it, is to have a database, a strong database for decision makers all over on the macro level, the meso level, and the micro level. And I believe that we need, actually, Nashwa, we have all the raw materials in order to have such a very important data and institutions to work on it. Just we need the vision and the willingness to go further toward having these data, because without a database you cannot take decisions in the right way.
The President talked a lot about the industrialization, and whether we're talking about food or ready-made clothes or all these industries, I believe also it is not only about the factory but human capital.
Yes.
Because you can never reach you can have a competitive advantage without having someone who's going to work let's say up to the international standards. So you can work on having ready-made clothes, exporting, and also talking about food and all these things.
This is another challenge, actually, because I'm working on that for more than 20 years nowadays, and I have a foundation, NGO, working in training and economic empowerment of poor people, and actually I'm concentrating on ready-made clothes and garments for women, specifically to address women in rural areas. And actually, you have the wealth is in people. Actually,
Egyptians are very clever, actually.
And Egyptians, as you mentioned, are very, very clever. Imagine, Nashwa, that in only 1 month we are training women that they don't have actually even the prerequisite of education. And they are very poor, but in 1 month they manage to have the skills enough in order to start getting out of poverty line. And this is happening in 1 month only. And but the issue is how to manage these human resources towards not only starting from their home working or in factories or in workshops and so on, but after that how to gather them in a small or micro enterprise so that to gain their lives, and how to integrate them in the value chain. This is the big dilemma for the production and the industrial sector. Every part is working in a dispersed way. We are not collaborating our activities, as if when we talk, we are large companies. We have our interests that are quite different than the middle and the small companies. So we are working on our interests. This is our dilemma. If we work in a collaborative way and contemplate each other, I believe that the You know, the situation is going to change completely regarding building our competitiveness, specifically in this, you know, labor-intensive industries like ready-made clothes, like furniture. We have a
I was just going to move
potentialities.
into this because I
Yes.
want to talk also about, now we can see that in each of the governorates in Egypt, we can find a competitive advantage.
Yes,
We can
yes.
find something that they concentrated on to start to have their own factory and to work. Like, for example, what happened in furniture.
Yes, you know, this is the idea of industrial zones, how to create industrial zones and industrial clusters. And this is actually the main core of the Chinese miracle of economic growth. You know, they built, you know, industrial zones as cities of production, specified and clustered production, a city for ready-made garments, a city for, you know, everything. And, you know, the management of such cities and to how extent they use resources efficiently, you know, created what we can see as the second largest economy in the world. So I believe that Egypt is full of opportunities. We are not doing well regarding economic management of our potentialities, and what we are starting nowadays to figure out is how to be on the right track towards using our resources in a better way. From here it comes that, you know, that Egypt is representing a very good potentiality for foreign investments nowadays, for profitable investment. And from here it comes the importance of how to enhance the climate of investment, how to manage and monitoring what's going regarding this area, because I believe this can play a significant role towards a better life for most Egyptians.
Dr. Youmn Hamaki, Professor of Economics at Shams University, always a pleasure having you with us
Thank you,
on the
ma'am.
show. Right, moving on to a quick break, then we'll be back.